Welcome back to the Daily Lift. The Bible oftentimes seems to teach things that are counterintuitive. Sometimes they're really difficult for us to wrap our minds around, and sometimes they're even so foreign to what we've learned in the past that they seem downright backwards. But this really makes perfect sense because the Bible tells us that God does not see as man sees, nor are his ways like man's ways. And some of these paradoxes that we come across is whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Nicodemus goes to Jesus by night and he asks, how can you be born again when you're old? James tells us that God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. And Jesus also tells us on the Sermon on the Mount that the meek shall inherit the earth. But along the same lines of these, there's another paradox that I want to draw our attention to. And these may certainly be difficult to wrap our minds around at first, but when we begin to understand them and apply them, they are so simplistic and so very profound. Paul says, for when I am weak, then I am strong. What does he mean by this? How can we find strength through weaknesses? Well, Paul here in 2 Corinthians is telling the Corinthian church about his infirmity. He calls it a thorn in the flesh, and he tells them that he's prayed about it 3 times. And his inspired response from the Lord is, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. And this here begins to change Paul's perspective on what he considers strength and weakness. Rather than Satan is out to buffet him, meaning preventing him or mistreating or causing him bodily harm, he's now saying, I take pleasure in sickness. I take pleasure in poverty and in persecutions and in distress. And as James says, count it all joy when you fall into those various trials. But how can this be? Well, this can be this way because of what Hanani the seer says to King Asa in 2 Chronicles 16. He says, the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is loyal to him. This can be this way because of what God says in 1 Samuel 16. He tells Samuel, for the Lord does not see as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Most would say that Goliath was too big to hit, but David said he's too big to miss. So what do we gather from this perspective here? Well, first off, we don't have to be strong by ourselves. It causes me to even question what true strength really is. And that true strength comes from within. It comes from our faith in God, our understanding that God is who he says he is, that he makes promises that he does not intend to break. And so remember this, that you are strong when you are loyal to God. You are strong when you esteem others higher than yourself. You are strong when you love those who aren't very lovable. And you're strong when you serve. So no matter how strong you feel, though, don't rely on that strength alone. Draw near to God and draw upon his strength. We cannot be made perfect through strength, but we can be made perfect through Jesus' strength and through his grace. So remember what the Bible has to say about strength. Rely on him, stay in the word, and as always, go lift somebody up.